Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if that personality test you took online actually measures anything real, or why some measurement tools in psychology feel a bit like guesswork? Well, this new research dives deep into that very question, asking how we can be sure our science is actually measuring what we think it is. Imagine you are teaching psychology, explaining the difference between validity and reliability, like a dartboard, where reliability is hitting the same spot every time, and validity is hitting the bullseye. Sounds simple, right? But then a student asks the million-dollar question. How do these fancy statistics actually prove we're measuring what we want to measure? And often we kind of just shrug. That's where this paper comes in. The authors highlight a big problem in psychology, call it the measurement crisis. They say that a lot of the way we test if a measurement tool is valid is like that comic strip where there is a big jump. Then a miracle occurs. We do a bunch of analysis. And then poof, supposedly it is valid, but there is a missing link. We assume the items are good, but we don't deeply explore how they work. They propose something called narrative response models, or NRMs for short. Think of an NRM as a detailed story or a step-by-step explanation of exactly what is happening in someone's mind when they answer a question on a measurement tool. It's about understanding the journey from the question itself to the final answer given. Traditionally, we've relied on something called construct validity. The idea is that if a measurement tool is related to other things it should be related to, and unrelated to things it shouldn't be related to, it's probably valid. But the authors argue this is a bit like saying a thermometer is valid because it shows higher temperatures on a hot day, without really understanding how the mercury expands. They believe we need to understand the mechanism of measurement. The core idea behind NRMs is built on two fundamental claims. First, the thing we want to measure, the construct like self-esteem or anxiety, actually exists. Second, and this is crucial, changes in that construct cause changes in how people respond to our questions. If a construct exists but doesn't influence our answers, then our measurement tool isn't measuring it. So how does an NRM work? It's basically a detailed narrative. For instance, if you have a question like, how confident are you that you can bake a cake? An NRM would break down each step. First, you understand the words. Then, you process what baking a cake means to you. Then, you access your stored knowledge about your ability. Maybe you remember the last time you tried and it was a disaster. Or maybe you've seen a lot of cooking shows and feel pretty good about it. Then, you judge your confidence based on that internal process. And finally, you pick an answer on the scale. This table here shows a really detailed NRM for measuring self-efficacy, which is basically your belief in your ability to do something. It goes through phases, understanding the question, how your self-belief plays a role, and finally how you pick an answer. It even includes details like whether you use a quick mental shortcut, a heuristic, or if you mentally simulate the action. It shows that if you think you can't do even one tiny sub-step, like finding the flower, your overall confidence might drop a lot. The authors explain that the early parts, like understanding the words, and the end parts, like picking an answer, are usually pretty similar for most people with the same type of question. The real magic, the part that gives us evidence for validity, is in the middle phase, the construct involvement. This is where the theory about how the construct actually influences the response comes in. To create an NRM, you first need a clear definition of the construct you're interested in. They stress that often these definitions are too short and vague. Then, you need the specific question or item you can develop an NRM using different approaches. You could use a rationalist approach, where researchers simply describe the expected response process based on their knowledge. Or a synthesis approach, where you gather insights from existing theories and research from different fields. An inductive approach uses empirical research like interviews, where you directly ask people how they answer a question to help build the story. It's like reverse engineering the mind. The real power of NRMs comes when you use them to guide validation. Each step in the NRM is a claim that can be tested. You can use methods like cognitive interviews, where you ask people to think aloud as they answer, or experiments to see if the predicted process holds true. They even mention a method called response process evaluation, or RPE, which uses online tools to gather this kind of information efficiently. And experiments can be designed to test specific parts of the NRM, for example. If the NRM suggests that difficulty with a subskill impacts overall confidence, you could design an experiment to test that directly. This whole process is called nano-epistemic iteration. It's about tiny iterative steps of adjusting the item, the construct definition, and the NRM itself. It might feel frustrating at first because you uncover a lot of questions, but the authors say this is actually a good thing. It shows you where the weaknesses are. Rather than just assuming your measurement tool is valid, that is the miracle they want to avoid. They believe NRMs can also be great teaching tools in psychology. They're accessible, connect theory with practice, and help students understand the real complexity of measurement without getting lost in statistics. This directly addresses the problem of students asking those tough questions without satisfying answers. So, to wrap up, NRMs offer a way to move beyond just checking if numbers correlate and actually understand how a measurement tool is supposed to work. It's about building confidence in our measurements by understanding the psychological process behind them. Like how a thermometer works, it brings us closer to a common sense definition of validity. Does it measure what it's meant to measure? Now, they do admit there are limitations. Creating good NRMs is hard work. It requires deep thought about the human psyche, which is notoriously complex. It's not as easy as just running a statistical test. They also note that because NRMs are narrative, they aren't directly machine readable, which could be a future area for development. But the advantages are significant. Their narrative nature makes them accessible. They allow us to study validity at the single item level, which is becoming more important. They don't force us into one specific research method, allowing for flexibility with interviews, experiments, or even computational modeling. They also provide a structured way to document the assumptions behind our measurements. Scroll finally, integrating narrative response models in psychology curricula will finally furnish teachers of psychometrics with an adequate response to a bright student who asks how we know that a given item is valid for a given construct, which seems a markedly more comfortable situation for all involved. Scroll ultimately, this research feels like a call for more transparency and rigor in how we measure psychological concepts. It's about moving from the miracle of statistical validation to a grounded understanding of the actual psychological processes involved. It's a step towards building better, more meaningful measurement tools for understanding the human mind. So, what do you think? Does this approach to validity make sense to you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more explorations into the fascinating world of psychology. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.